question was, why do I promote the idea of people preparing to be a criminal and engage in criminal activity? Like what's the reasoning behind all of that? Well, I'm going to explain it to you right now. First of all, you have to understand fundamentally what exactly is a criminal. Now, this is a problem that I think that most all of humanity is going to have a challenge with understanding. Your default setting, because this is bred into you, it is slavery. I don't know how else to say it. There's no nice way of putting it. You've been bred to be a slave. Many of you. I probably like 80-90% of you have been bred that way. You're not going to like hearing this, but no different than, like, I have a border collie, for example, right? And she tries to herd animals all the time, and I have never shown her how to herd animals. It's never happened, but she does it instinctively. Most of you have been bred to look to a higher authority than yourself. This is wrong. In fact, it even says, even for you Christians out there, it even says biblically that that's wrong for you to do that. It says that, there's one God, right? And he's not on this planet. That means that nobody on this planet really should have any authority over you at all. Let us make man in our image, be like us, kind of thing, right? Okay. So even, I'm saying this even as an atheist, this is like objective, that many of you have been bred to always look to authority, right? That's why you create the state. That's why people create all this shit, is because they're always looking for someone to give them definition, because otherwise you'd have to define it, right? Well, so when it comes to the idea of what is a criminal, well, it's usually, the definition is usually controlled by people who are, they themselves, engaged in all kinds of objectively what I would call criminal activities, right? Most of us would find the whole island thing that, I can't say his name on the internet apparently, otherwise no one will see this video, but that guy that just sort of unalived himself while he was in prison, magically, right? That guy who was running that whole operation. Yeah, see, that whole scenario, right? Those are the people that are calling you criminals. Okay, so remember, there's two laws that govern your existence on this planet, and that's the laws of physics and laws of conscience, and that's it. All right, and conscience, and I've gone over this and over this and over this, and I am going to answer your question, by the way, but I got to give you some foundation. Conscience has two components. It's what you don't want to do because you believe that, hey, I think this is wrong and I don't want to do it. The other side of it is the part that nobody talks about because it's the dangerous part. It's the part where you say, I can't in good conscience allow this to continue. Whatever this is, whatever we're talking about, okay? I don't know, there's a whole bunch of people that really, you should be really angry with right now. Talking to Americans and Brits, and French, Western Europeans in general. You guys should all be really fucking pissed about what the people that are in so-called positions of authority above you, right, that you've put them there, okay? You put them there. So you need to take them out of those positions. By hook or by crook, it's got to happen. It's going to happen mathematically anyway, but the sooner the better, right? Especially those of you who want to get on with your lives and have, families and kids and shit like that, continue your legacy, etc. So, because you've been bred to believe all this shit, and because you've been bred to always look to some higher authority, right? Rather than have, you don't know my background, but if you were to ask me about my father, I would tell you, I don't know the man. I've met him twice. I couldn't tell you anything about him. I couldn't tell you anything about my grandfather on his side. This is just it. So someone like me who grows up with no centralized authority of any kind, and then seeing hypocrisy for what it is, right? For me, it's very easy to break that leash long time ago for me, which is why I have the perspectives that I do, right? So when I explain to you that, dude, I am a criminal. I am a career criminal, have been for a long time. I'm telling you this stuff because that's just how this works, right? Once you break that leash, you realize now, it doesn't mean you don't know the difference between right and wrong. Okay, you understand? You know, that's not the same thing. You know, right and wrong or good and evil. That's a little different situation here. Okay, versus legal and illegal. It's perfectly legal to do a lot of shit that you shouldn't do, right? I mean, can we agree on that? And there's a lot of stuff that's illegal that you're like, what the fuck? Why is that illegal, right? Okay, so when I say you're always supposed to think about 10 moves ahead of everybody and just prepare yourself to be a criminal, and because on a long enough timeline, you will eventually become one. Well, think about it. Think about 30 years ago, right? So that'd be the 90s, not the 70s, okay? How many things that were perfectly normal back then that nowadays would probably get you put in jail? Totally normal back then. Like if you were to behave like that, right? What about 1975? Let's say it's 1975. How many things that were totally legal and total, like commonplace, almost mundane back then that now if you did them now, my God, you'd probably be thrown in jail, right? I mean, you can use drinking and driving, for example. I'm not encouraging you to do that. I'm just pointing out that back in the 70s, you know, usually what happened was they just said, you know, they just took your keys and they just said, dude, you know, sleep it off, whatever, you know. It wasn't the money racket that it is now. Okay? So that's how this works. And like you just have to kind of think about it in those terms. And just keep this in mind, the pigs are going to enforce whatever, they will enforce anything as long as someone's paying them. That's how pigs work. They don't have, they're honorless, gutless, you know, pieces of shit that just do it for money. They're not interested in actually being patriotic or anything. Because see, if they were, they'd be screaming about how, hey, I'm not enforcing anything unconstitutional until you would deport all these fucking illegals. They won't do that. They won't do that. None of the pigs will do that. None of them will. As evidenced by they're still out there running around collecting money all goddamn day long. They got no problem with that. Fuck all of you. For real. I mean, like, dude, this is the kind of bullshit that like real people out here who think, see. Okay, so that's the way that's why I tell people that. Because there's a whole bunch of things that you will eventually be turned into a criminal on a long enough timeline. Because the system, the boomerism, I mean, for those of you that are into isms, boomerism is what we have now. It's worse than communism. It's worse than the worst parts of capitalism. It's like the worst part of everything. And there's like no way out because they'll just keep outvoting you because, you know, we want to have democracy rather than a republic, right? So, I mean, just keep in mind, I mean, you know, those of us that talk about a republic and a Republican form of government, small r Republican, not Republican Party, has nothing to do with that, okay? Like just keep in mind that the founders of this country were all like hardcore fucking criminals. Many of them were I mean, like, dude, look up some of the history of some of these guys, right? Doesn't mean that they weren't smart guys. It just means that they understood the way the world worked. And my guess is that most of humanity hasn't had anybody talk to you like this in a very long time, not straight, and not tell you the fucking truth. So no, you'll probably be made into criminals at some point through stuff that you're just living your life. That's why I say you should always be prepared to be a criminal, because that's just how they're going to see it. Anybody who wants to just keep their money, right? Money you earned. Just wanting to keep that, saying, hey, listen, it's mine. I earned it. I'm keeping this. That's considered criminal behavior. Is it not? I mean, you know what I'm talking about here. Okay? I mean, you should be able to, you're adults, you know. I mean, there's a few kids that follow me and stuff. You shouldn't, but I mean, you do. I get it. But I mean, I'm just telling you that this is the reality. So that's how I see it. And it's something that you should really think about. And you should think about trying to undo in your DNA, because it is in your DNA for many of you. And, you know, this is where you can go that nature and nurture thing. And this is where you have to kind of, you know, start saying, okay, hold on, maybe I need to start undoing all of this constant obedience. Start with running red lights. Start with something simple. Running red lights or something like that. You know, I mean, you know, move your way up, you know, to the stuff that needs to be done.